All right, we do have a quorum. We have one, Director Novello is an excused absence, and we have Director Stenenbein on the phone. So we do have a quorum. First order of business is the approval of the December 21st minutes. Are there any changes or corrections? No, they will stand as written. So moving on to new business, the 23 year-to-date fiscal review. CFO Swan.
Good morning. Thank you, Director Hurley. President Hurley, excuse me. Director Hurley. Well, let's get it fired up here this morning. We'll talk about December. Really excited about the December year-to-date results here. In very good shape, you'll see that. So let's get started. So the topics here are, we're going to roll through the financial statements. We're going to look at month-to-date compared to budget and prior year, and then we're going to look at year-to-date compared to budget and prior year, and then we'll do that for the income statement and the capital section of the income statement, and then we'll talk about the capital spend, capital project spend for the year, and finish up with the fully funded balance percent. So looking at the income from operations for the month, when we compare December fiscal year 24 to the budget, we finished at $39,000 favorable in operating revenue. Looking at the expense structure, $129,000 favorable on the expense side for the month of December compared to budget. You'll see wages and benefits. We have some open positions still, mainly in the golf maintenance area, and there's 15 total, but that's what's driving that favorable variance in wages and benefits. And then if you look at supplies and services, when we put up the year-to-date, you'll see that's tracking very favorable, and that's mainly due to a couple of things. One, Carl and his team on the recreation services side, when it comes to supplies and equipment, has done a phenomenal job with his team after taking over that area, and we should continue to see most of that savings in the recreation division. One of the other big areas of the supplies and equipment positive variance is in fuel prices. So fuel has gone down, so we'll continue to see savings there. But some of it's due to timing, so we may go unfavorable in certain months, but we should have a pretty good favorable variance by the end of the year in supplies and services. That should continue. About $129,000 favorable for December. And overall, $168,000 favorable for the month of December, and compared to budget, and then compared to prior year, $240,000 favorable, $226 in operating revenue increase, and then those expense savings in December. Looking at actual to budget year to date, we are right on budget. 23, little favorable in revenue, $23,000. And then in the expense categories, the things we talked about a little earlier on wages and wages is 160 favorable. Overall, 156 favorable. Supplies and services we talked about. Repairs and maintenance, we should make that up 159,000 as we finish out through the year. Kind of hard to get the timing on those things because you can't plan for a lot of those things, or you have to take advantage of purchasing power and things like that at certain times. So that will that should abate as we go through the year. And then the landscape maintenance area, seed came in much more favorable than we had budgeted. Unfortunately, I got the word from Todd that it's going to increase again this year, so I don't know that we'll have that favorable savings again for fiscal year 25, but we'll keep an eye on it. 156,000 year to date on the expense side. And overall, 179,000 favorable in the income from operations. Again, we're going to move into, those numbers aren't red up there, but they are negative. So we're going to move into the black as we complete January and February. So we'll see those operating incomes start to surpass the cash outflow and become inflow. Looking compared to prior year, 124,000 unfavorable to prior year. Big drivers there are wages and benefits, all budgeted for, and then utilities. We talked about it last month, but utilities have been a little bit of a struggle with an overall, I believe it was 8% in 9% in the rate increase and 12% in the usage increase year over year. So moving to the capital section, some really good news here, especially when we look at compared to budget in prior year, especially prior year. So looking at the capital related section, APFs were very healthy in the month of December and came in 109,000 over prior year. Over budget. And in our investment, the investment of our reserve funds, we had a unrealized positive gain of 721,000, and in the investment income, 48,000 over budget. So all good in the reserve fund for the month of December. Compared to prior year, December finished 1.3 million over prior year, and in the capital section with APFs and the unrealized gain versus a 400,000 unrealized loss, which was 1.1 million favorable to prior year. Looking year to date, APFs again 281 over budget, which is great, and in the investment income, 259,000. Those are all real cash impacts into our reserve fund. So whenever we have a positive variance there to budget or prior year, that's a real cash impact in our reserve fund, which is great. And looking at unrealized gains, 848,000, and realized gains and losses of negative 250. So overall, the investment portfolio on the reserve fund has been good for the first 6 months of FY24. Total 1.274 favorable to budget, and 1.8 million favorable to prior year. Look at the capital notables compared to prior year, 478,000 in APF revenues over prior year. We've collected 14 more APFs, which would be 14 times 5,000. So, and then 800 times 488, and the increase in fee, roughly 478,000 over prior year. And then the reserve fund valuation, almost 1.5 million favorable compared to prior year, and an investment income 245,000 over prior year. So looking at the overall revenue over under expenses, 1.453 favorable to budget, and 1.7 favorable to prior year. All right, switching to capital expenditures. We have a $5.5 million capital improvement budget in this year, and we have a projected favorable savings of $525,000. year to date. So the highlighted items are completed capital items, and you can see what the projected variance is, column there, and then the approved budget amount, and then the PO amount. So kind of a couple notables here that you could total up that projected variance, and that totals the $525,000 we talked about earlier. But we also, with that favorable variance of over $500,000, that's including two capital projects that weren't in the budget. One was an emergency and one was an approval by the governing board, and that's the Echo Mesa well pump and the lawn bowling benches. So even with that $94,000 in additional capital spend, we're still tracking at $500,000 over budget, or under budget. Looking at the allowances, allowances are for unexpected capital expenditures. So these are things that fall outside or are unexpected, or they could be emergency. They could be, it could be something where we have an opportunity to do something. We're in the middle of another capital project. Most of this stuff are items that are replacement items as well. So they're on the reserve study, or they become a capital item because, and you'll see like there's an ozone machine in there. I don't know if that was this year. That might have been last year. But still, the ozone machine for the pool before was $3,000. Now it's $6,000. So it becomes a capital item because it lasts longer than 5 years. So sometimes we add things to the reserve study just because the price of those have gone up. And our policy says $5,000 with a 5-year useful life. So that happens sometimes. But the point is, we have an unspent value of $164,000 on the $400,000 budgeted allowances, and we display what we purchase monthly. So every month we give an updated total of what we've purchased with those allowance funds. So anything in allowance, the GM has a spending authority. Well, overall, the GM has a spending authority of up to $50,000. Anything over $50,000 has to be approved by this board if it's not budgeted. With that said, these are the items that these have either come from clubs, they've come from operations, there have been emergency items, there are ADA items, there's all these different categories, but this is the list of those items. So what it's all about, the reserve fund, in my opinion, Pete gets really excited when he looks at this because Pete sees green, and green is good. So here we've got some great positive, favorable variances to our reserve fund this year. And so we budgeted to the tune of 2 points through December in our FFB percent. So policy says we have to have at least 40% of our fully funded balance and of our reserve study. And right now we're at 51% year to date. So that's good news. That concludes my presentation.
All right, do we have any questions for Cliff? Dick?
I don't have a question, but I do have a comment that I'd like to make. I'm absolutely thrilled to see our FFB at 51%. That is 2 points over what we had thought it was going to be. And in our world, 2% of this is a huge issue. So,
it's about $1 million.
yeah, it's a million. Yeah, it's about $1 million.
Yep.
Okay. Yes. Director Vines. It just moved up a seat.
Thank you, President Hurley. I just want to piggyback onto what Dick said, Director Rhodes, because that's huge, that $1 million, given the fact that we pulled out almost $6 million for Grandview. And so that's huge. It's phenomenal.
Harry, do you have any comments?
No comment.
Okay, thanks. Anybody else? No. Okay. Are you done?
Yes. You go to the audience now, or is that?
Do we have
Yes or
any
no audience?
questions from the audience?
I'm sorry.
Okay, we'll go ahead and move on to head 3.02.
Thank you.
24-25 capital budget. Capital Projects Manager Carl Wilhelm.
Morning, President Hurley, Governing Board, audience. I'm happy to give an update on the FY 24-25 capital projects being proposed for the next budget. Checking my list against the list that's on the screen. Sorry about that. I don't really have any updates to give other than a review of the new that's being proposed and an update on where we're at in the capital project planning process. So here we sit at January at the end of the month. Next month in February, we'll be rolling out this list that you see on the screen here in its entirety, as we do every single month. And it'll list any changes that will be coming in February. I do expect some changes after discussions with the general manager and staff, and some savings, some increases, and some added line items, both in new and reserve study categories. So as we stand today, everything that you see on the screen is accurate, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Do we have any questions for Carl? Carl, you're going to go through the new items?
I can.
Okay, I just want to remind the board that we will be looking at these, voting on these in March. So if we have any questions, now's the time to start asking. So just keep that in mind. Thank you, Carl.
Terry, if you could cue the presentation, there you go. Our first capital slide for the new category is the Sports Pavilion Lizard Acres Bar Room renovation and equipment, $225,000 proposed. This is for 40 linear foot of new bar and bar top. The picture here presents what the architectural team is working on as we move along over the next few months and getting any items identified by county or architectural needs to our buildings. It will advance the bar area with a 2 walk-up point of sale area, static seating for 160 to 180 persons. It will maintain the Wii bowling displays. It also will maintain the 3 dartboards that are in the space currently. It includes some new coolers and sanitizing equipment. Relocates some of our equipment like the 3-compartment sink and the 4-tap beer cooler. And we're proposing to introduce a new 2-tap craft beer cooler. This project will include modifying lighting and some controls in the Sports Pavilion's Lizard Acres pub. And also plumbing, electrical, and HVAC if Maricopa County determines. Bar framing and decor plans are being worked on as we speak by a small subcommittee or a design team, I should say. And we keep moving along and progressing this project further every month in discussions. Moving on to the library expansion renovation, design, architecture, and documents. Our request is for $100,000 for unknown fees if we advance the library expansion conversation through this budget process. This is for costs related to architectural and engineering, interior and exterior renovations and additions, any design and architectural fees. It would provide us architectural plans and the structural documents needed. And then the most important thing, it would provide us the information to be able to present 60% plans to vendors so that we can do a cost analysis for future year planning for this project. Moving on, we have a new piece of equipment being proposed, the R.H. Johnson tractor with backhoe. This backhoe is for the facilities maintenance team. It's a rapid response availability. It eliminates costly rentals, eliminates the time to travel if the vehicle is available for rental, and reduces the need for a subcontractor to be hired. Moving on, Beardsley Park iron fence with gates for $57,500. This would decoratively enclose Beardsley Park. It's a 4-foot tall iron fence that matches the areas around Horseshoe. It still has full access to the park at all times with 4 community entry gates, 3 maintenance vehicle gates, And it eliminates that seasonal green fence that we put up every year for events, and reduces labor and fatigue from that fence install and replacement of that fence that gets damaged every single year. And it helps with the control points for securing the park during events. The Kuntz Tennis Facility renovation and court conversion design and architectural documents. Again, if the governing board proposes to move this project forward, this $50,000 is just like for the library. It's an amount that's needed in case interior facility renovations and post-tension lighting and fencing, design concepts, architectural fees, and engineering costs, so that we can come up with a 60% plans so that vendors can provide us a cost for overall renovation in a future year. And that concludes new. And I'm also here in case we have any questions with the reserve study items.
Carl, I do have a question on the Beardsley fence, and it encloses the mini golf area. Was there any thought to excluding that from the fenced area?
It wouldn't change the linear footage by only about a couple feet. And if you were to travel that today, you'll see it's complicated between what we know as infrastructure between the restrooms and the mini golf. So, and it's not a very clean straight line if you can see from the photo.
Right.
So we felt that the best bet would be right along the walkway. Now on the aquatic side, that fence will be tucked into the landscape and be a little less apparent.
Mhm.
So it's the best solve, but if you have an absolute comment to make about changing that, I can look into it further.
No, I don't. I just wanted to make sure that access to the mini golf would not be impeded.
Not impeded, that there's no plans to keep the park closed, gates open all the time.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Carl on any of these? Director Rhodes?
Carl, I hate to keep bringing this up, but on the Kuntz tennis facility, or the pickle, or whatever we're going to call that, the $50,000 that we're planning to spend on that, do I have any assurance that that would be something that the product that comes out of that, it could be versatile, that we wouldn't have to use this configuration, we could use a different configuration or use this for something else? Because this is a very controversial configuration, and I'm not sure that I have confidence that that's what we really want.
I guess the best answer for that would be if the question is mainly about how many tennis or how many pickleball, then yes, the plans still would produce an ability to have any configuration of that. The engineering that is provided is to make sure that if a certain amount of one style of court requires electrical loads for additional lighting or something like that, then I would have that information. But it is fully changeable on how many courts, but the plans are for redevelopment of a sports court facility. So if your thoughts were anything but sports court facilities, then no, the plans would not be helpful.
So just to clarify, and let's just, I want everybody to know I'm just making this up right now. This is, okay. So let's pretend that we decide that this is all pickleball, or let's pretend that this is all tennis. Would the results, the product that you're going to, that you would get from this $50,000 investment, would that be beneficial in making that decision?
Yes, that would be perfectly fine. I mean, the facility can be done in any configuration of 6 tennis courts or the appropriate amount of pickleball courts that would fit on a tennis court.
Thank you.
Director Vine, do you have a comment?
Yes, thank you, President Hurley. Carl, I read somewhere in here, and I was looking for my notes, that I was happy to see that it looked like we were bringing the copiers in to the capital improvement.
So in the February presentation for updates on this capital budget, the accounting team will have some new data to present for copiers. They're finding efficiencies, whether we need all of them that have been presented over the last few months in how we use our copiers. Isn't that correct? And so you'll probably see a positive change in that next month.
So we'll, because I was looking for it here and I don't see it here. It's not here yet.
No, it's because it's
It'll be
not
here
new.
next
That
month.
is a repair and replacement
Repair and
item,
Great.
an asset we have.
And I think that's outstanding. It's something we need. So wonderful. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yes, Jack?
Thank you, Mr. President. Back to the Kuntz tennis facility renovation. The emails that I get about this proposed item indicate to me that neither the tennis club nor the pickleball club want this. So what is driving this?
Your decision.
Well, and also,
So my question is, who is presenting this? Who wants this?
The staff, the general manager and staff have evaluated our best and most available center for a change in the requests from multiple people, like pickleball, so to have additional courts, and it's been asked many years in a row. This is an opportunity for solving that if you agree as a governing board.
Okay, thank you.
Director Williams?
We have been told 3 meetings in a row by the pickleball club, they absolutely want no part of this. This is our last usable space. We don't have a lot of room to grow for things that we really need. I think that it's a $50,000 waste of money, and if we've got $50,000 to spend, I'd far rather see it spent on copy equipment for our staff who have machines breaking down all the time that generate volumes for us at every meeting. I think it's a matter of priorities of what's important. The Christmas wish list of $50,000 on that particular site, I think is just a huge mistake to even consider it further. Thank you.
There's a repairman there now working on the copier, and from what I heard from my office, he can't fix it.
Yeah. We're hearing more and more of people where we can't get parts for equipment we have.
Director Vines?
On the pickleball, the Kuntz tennis facility renovation. Oh, thank you, President Hurley. I agree with Kay. The fact is that I believe it's being, questions were asked from maybe members of these clubs, not actual the club itself. I don't believe, I asked the question multiple times. CR 13s were not submitted from the clubs themselves. It appears at this moment in time, we don't have a need for additional courts at this time. Maybe down the road there might be. I agree with Director Williams. We don't need to spend the money at this time for this renovation, and we do, however, need copiers. So I think the money should be thrown that direction.
Okay, just one other thing to add on the Kuntz courts. The Kuntz courts are on the R&R study, and it's been several years past their useful date. So I think one of the things that motivated this was just the desire to do something to update those courts.
Right, and I think we could find maybe a better use for them. I would like to see that, as
Okay.
Director Williams suggested.
Director Schlemmer?
Thank you, President Hurley. I sort of echo the same concerns as I look at Kuntz, the Kuntz courts. And I'm glad that this got on here for exactly the discussion we had from the various clubs and so forth, because I've heard more in the last 2 months about the tennis courts than we were hearing leading up to it, and I think a big part of that was getting it out in the forefront. But my concern is this: anything that we do in terms of these expenditures is not just for those of us who live here today, but these are going to live on for quite a while. And Kay said it well. This is one of the last real opportunity areas in Sun City West in terms of land and space to do something. And the difficult part as I sit today is I think we need to understand better what the needs of a community like ours will be going forward in terms of facilities, activities, and so forth. I mean, 20 years ago, pickleball wasn't nearly what it is today. And I think we have to better understand those emerging trends to figure out what is the right use for this land. And maybe it is completely different than it is today. So I have some real concern on the $50,000 to keep it in its current use, especially given the remarks we've heard from the various participants. The second area of concern for me is, before we ultimately vote on this, I would like some data around the actual member usage of, like, the Lizard Acres Pub. We have usage on the library. We're asking for a lot of money, and in particular to the Lizard Acres Pub's $225,000. Yet we're not changing any of the space in terms of the capacity. And I look at that and I wonder, is that the best use of $225,000 when at the end of the day it really isn't going to change the revenue stream, it isn't going to increase the capacity, and the biggest complaint I hear about Lizard Acres isn't anything to do with its layout, it's the fact that our members can't get in. And so I really would like to better understand who actually uses that facility and is spending $225,000 if it doesn't change revenue the best use of $225,000 when we have a lot of other things here that could also demand that allocation.
All right, good comments. Harry, do you have any comments?
Just that I kind of agree with what Alan just said. I think there needs to be a little more study, because I get the emails too that, pickleball says they do not want any more courts there. And I think we need to do a study of how much usage is there, how many empty courts are there? Because I walked around when I wasn't feeling good and I just viewed the courts, and every time I went to either one of the courts, there was open courts available for use.
Okay, thanks, Harry. Carl?
I'd like to follow up on a couple of those comments made. Let's start with the Lizard Acres Pub. My biggest reminder here is that this is a project that legitimately came up from multiple years of Sports Pavilion Committee meetings. And if Director Vines has any comments on that, then I would defer to that. So that is the forward momentum of getting to this point. And the reality is the homework that I provide you so that you can see the cost. So that's my comments on the Lizard Acres Pub. And just to kind of plant a seed or a vision for the Kuntz facility, it is a tennis court facility in the ground with walls engineered and designed for a court sport facility. In the future, if this wasn't to gain traction as a refurbished sport court facility, whether it's pickleball, tennis, or a combination, please be mindful that it's not a facility that can be built on. It's not a wall structure that can be re-engineered. It would need to be demoed, and if the idea was at some point, someday, fill it in with dirt, just understand that dirt management is very, very expensive. You can imagine that the hill here at R.H. Johnson called Meeker Mountain, you would need every piece of that dirt to fill in that hole. And, that involves compaction and engineering. And I'm just planting that seed that, it's not something that's, if it doesn't get improved, I believe that the future is that it's going to sit as an empty facility for a while. So just making that point known.
Okay, thank you. Director Vines?
Thank you, President Hurley. So in regards to Lizard Acres, when Lizard Acres was first conceived, it was kind of thrown together with less than $50,000. So they didn't have a big budget to work with. It really took off. It has more than sustained itself. It earns money every month, every year. And the problem that we were running into was people were moving the tables all around, and we have major ADA compliance issues. So this is when we decided, okay, now we need to look at it, that it's doing more than what we had anticipated it was actually going to do. Barry has done studies. Less than 10% of the crowd that comes in there on our busy nights are outsiders. That's less than 10%. At one night it was 4%. It was averaging on the Friday nights 4%. And So Carl has worked really hard with his team with the tables and the chair and the layout to make them to where they're going to be. What do you call them, Carl?
ADA compliant.
ADA
I mean,
compliant.
those are the most important things in this consideration, is that the room is being used for the same purpose, whether it gets renovated or not. But moving forward, we just, there was no way that we were going to expand that bar and not take into considerations all the safety needs and the impacts from county. So these are the driving factors of cost and redesigning a space like that.
And with the bar expansion, we're adding, as opposed to the one bartender, we now have 2 servers, and making it much more convenient for not just the people in Lizard Acres, but for the bowlers as well. And they're going to enjoy being able to go in there and after they bowl.
Okay, Director Williams, you have another comment?
Yes, I do have another comment. The Properties Committee is very concerned about it. This is a good time for that expenditure. We have requested an additional amount of information. I'd like to invite all of you to our meeting, February 8th. We will have a detailed report from my friend Clef down here, because one of our major concerns is how much money have we spent on it so far? Where did it come from? How did it happen? And why do we need to change it? So 9 o'clock here, February 8th, we'll have some answers for all of you who attend. So just wanted to make sure you're aware that that is a concern, and we're looking at answers to it. So thank you.
Okay. Yeah, Lizard. Okay. Carl, you had something else?
Just before I conclude on the capital discussion, if you have no further questions, Director Williams sent a very good email from the homework that our club has produced in discussions on these same topics. And some of the topics were the new tractor with backhoe, flatbed trailer with forklift, landscaping equipment, Palm Ridge pickleball court resurface, Johnson pickleball court resurface, all golf course patio furniture, and to bring some additional information to the Properties Committee. So I'm going to bring that in questions forward to all committees, and so that you have a better understanding of why some of them are considered new, which is a lot different than the items such as flatbed trailer for forklift and Palm Ridge and pickleball court replacements. Those are reserve study line items that all you're doing is kicking the can if you don't do it. And I already have emails from the pickleball club at Palm Ridge, citing the conditions. Now, I've walked those every time I get a concern, and we don't have a safety issue, but they are due for replacement. So that's the information I'll be bringing to the next committee meetings.
Okay. Any other comments from the directors before we go to the audience? Oh, okay, you have comments online? Would you read them, please?
Yes. First one is from Ed Westel. At Kuntz, do we know if we have enough parking spaces to handle the extra traffic that the new courts would bring in? Second one.
No, go ahead. Do we have a response?
Okay,
We know?
the other one is from Mystical Michelle. How many times have we rented a backhoe this past year, and at what cost? There are ongoing maintenance costs as well. I believe this is an unnecessary expense at this time.
Okay. All right, thank you. You want to respond now?
Regarding the backhoe, Carl, do you have
I have the information.
specific data?
Yep.
Okay, I was just going to do a little talk on a return on investment. Go ahead and talk about them.
Russ Boston has provided the information that we've only been renting this year. In the past, we would borrow the landscapes backhoe. We are finding that it was less and less available when we needed it. Again, 90% of our needs are emergency water line breaks, which include facility closures. We tried to do everything we can to get the repairs done quickly so we can reopen the facility as quickly as possible. We did start renting this year, so we do not have the backup data for some of the items that were questioned. We are currently at 400 per day, $400 per day for a rental, some repairs taking multiple days. We did get a direct quote from an equipment vendor and got it down to $55,000. So the vehicle that is being proposed today sits on this list at $75,000. You'll see it in the month of February going down to $55,000. It is, as the picture was shown on the screen, the equipment life would be 20 years, and the equivalent of renting the equipment is estimated at $82,400 over those 20 years. Average uses is 10 tasks per year again, some running multiple days. And again, as I mentioned, we'll have an updated slide for the next committee's presentations.
Okay.
The other question was,
Parking at Kuntz, if we do something with that space.
that is the purpose of the 60% planning, architectural review, and engineering and questions to Maricopa County, which come at a fee. It doesn't necessarily come at a $50,000 fee, but if that's doing their hourly labor and homework for us to get to a place where we can answer those questions earlier than later, that comes with at least some form of fee.
Okay? Thank you. All right, we're going to take audience comments strictly on the capital projects. Give us your name and
My name is
number.
Sharon Heddick. My record number is 106159. I'm going to just make one small comment. It's called master plan. You don't have a master plan. None of these fees for either the library or the tennis should be included in anything until you have a master plan. These items were supposed to be looked at through some of the research that was done. You've not had any comments from anybody in the community, whether they want, what I'm hearing about the library, just so you all know, about 1.8 miles from right here, there's being built a $37 million cultural center and library in Maricopa County, 1.8 miles away. It's in Surprise, where the senior center used to be, that area. And it's been, the county gave them $18 million to work on it. I don't recall anyone getting $18 million here for any of our library, nor have we even asked for it. We are an unincorporated area. Those funds are available to us just like they are to the city of Surprise. So again, you haven't looked at the master plan to begin to even look at where your funding can come from other than the backs of the residents.
Thank you.
You bet.
Good morning, Board.
Morning.
I'm only interested in the,
Name and rec number, please.
yes, I'm sorry, Bruce Lee's, 135422.
Thank you, Bruce.
Who proposed the renovation to the Kuntz facility? Because, again, there was a mention that nobody had submitted from any of the clubs the required documentation to put something on the budget or request it be added to the budget. Okay, so I'm kind of curious where the actual origination came from. A specific person, a specific club, a specific employee, can that be identified and revealed? Why is everything such a secret?
It's not a secret. The GM will reply to that.
Thank you, President Hurley. As President Hurley mentioned earlier, the Kuntz renovation of the 6 tennis courts is in our reserve study. They're at an age where it is time for them to be replaced or renovated.
Correct.
And so, just like every other facility that we have, when its useful life is up, it gets maintained. In today's world, dealing with all of the needs and wants of the association members here, other pickleball presidents have come into our office with design plans asking for additional courts. There has been work done in the past. We have seen documentation due to design drawings dating back to 5-6 years ago of 18 additional pickleball courts being requested by the club and to occupy a third of the parking lot at Palm Ridge. 18 more courts for $3 million. Pickleball is a growing sport. We hear it all the time. We don't have enough courts. There has been dialogue in the past of sharing the tennis court with pickleball. That is a little bit of a Hatfield and McCoy situation, right?
Correct.
And so, yes, there are downsides to that, but there are upsides when it comes to saving money.
Correct.
And so when
And-
we were looking at tennis courts a while back, we walked the site with tennis enthusiasts, and the courts are horrible. They're not playable. 3 have been completely shut down. And we basically gave an opportunity there for tennis and pickleball to unite. A couple of tennis presidents and pickleball presidents ago, and we put striping down so the courts could be used for both sports. And it worked for a little while. Pickleball wasn't overly enthused by it, nor was tennis. So from a trial experiment, we did some of that. And so when it comes down to that something needs to be done with these tennis courts, the amount of play that tennis gets in our facilities is down, right? It's not tremendously full. We're not busting at the seams for the need of tennis courts. So the reserve study says we need to replace 6 of them. But if pickleball is having so much of a demand for tennis court or for pickleball courts, this seemed like a pretty logical scenario to maybe kill 2 birds with 1 stone and provide a few more pickleball courts at a venue. We've got 8 pickleball courts in this parking lot that people get to use. When the club uses the pickleball courts, they have a designated set of time to do so. Ordinary members can't play during that particular set of time or join the club. But if they want to, we don't have anything to offer them other than the courts down here that are generally full during those times. So it was an opportunity to provide another recreational venue for non-club members, owner members, to recreate at a very inexpensive rate for just converting the courts that we have to pickleball courts as opposed to building $3 million worth of new.
Correct.
That's how this isn't a secret, but this is how this has evolved into where we are today.
Thank you very much. If I may continue. So the majority of the members do not want this conversion due to the noise effects, lack of parking, other specifics that are related to it, the walls and such. I'm of the opinion, and there may be people that support me, maybe people that don't, recommend this project be scrapped and plans be developed to convert some of the tennis courts to pickleball. There had been previously a proposal to take the tennis facility, convert some of those courts to exclusive pickleball, not combined courts and such. I believe that the money would be more well spent to develop the same kind of scenario that you're looking to approach with Kuntz to that. Because again, tennis is not as explosive as the pickleball. I don't think there is going to be the sustained growth associated as pickleball is. That may be an alternative to use those funds. It doesn't cost us any money not to repair and replace on schedule if there isn't a bona fide plan that benefits the community. Just because it's on the R&R doesn't mean we have to throw money at it. Thank you very much.
And if I just may, we plan on that. That concept has been alive for a while. If 6 tennis courts were to be converted from the recreation center here, and the 6 tennis courts would be restructured and refinished over at Kuntz, the tennis facility here would be down to 10 courts as opposed to the 16, and they would pick up 6 more courts over at Kuntz. So they would stay even par. They would still have 16 tennis courts. Converting 6 tennis courts here at the recreation center at Johnson would provide you 24 additional pickleball courts. That has been discussed. That comes down to money. That comes down to the approval of boards, and that's why we sit at this table, to try to figure out what direction we're going. But it all comes down to budget.
Okay. Nick.
Hi, Nick Turner, 131829. More comments again about how the long-term plan ties into this and prioritization of capital expenditure. My understanding was that the Budget and Finance Committee recently, there was a recommendation to come to the governing board about the prioritization of the kind of 7 items which have been mentioned as part of the long-term plan. And I don't see that on the agenda today. And that prioritization request was to happen by the end of February, presumably so that then when it comes to budgeting decisions, we have some kind of ranked priority which can be used to decide whether this 150,000 should go on Kuntz tennis courts or on the library. And I just don't see that happening. And even if it did happen, I don't know that there's adequate time for input from the community towards that prioritization. So I've got really two suggestions. The first one is take the $150,000, put it into a special allowance, which is earmarked for whatever the higher prioritized items are. Therefore, in next year's budget, you have money that you can spend on that research engineering work, if it's for Kuntz, the library, or something else. The money is still there, and it's in the budget, but it's earmarked for that, and the governing board can make a decision next year as to how they should spend it. I also thinking about on terms of the long-term plan, I think somebody needs to pick it up and drive it. Somebody from the governing board needs to pick it up and drive it. Not expecting $500,000 worth of fantastic presentation from external consultants, but let's have 3 or 4 slides, 1 or 2 pages on the 7 items. And then let's have a look at it. Let's have a discussion on it. And if we feel we need outside consulting work to help, let's talk about that at the time. Thank you.
That's scheduled for the workshop coming up February 9th.
I'm Chris Waller, 140558. I want to comment on 2 subjects. The first is the Kuntz tennis and racquetball court. I understand the difficulty of deciding what to do with this. I just want to remind everybody here that we need to do something with it because it's dangerous, it's unsightly, it's not up to Sun City West standards. So it's difficult to decide what to do, but something's got to happen to it. My second one, the second point is I have questions about the Lizard Acres Lounge. I've seen that drawing a number of times, and I'm in favor of the project. I'm concerned if there's enough room for a band and dancers in the front, where it looks like the dart area is a floor space that's not being used. I know we don't want to move tables around. It seems very obvious that the front 3 tables are going to be moved to the back where the dart courts are to make room for dancing. It seems like a typical natural thing to do. I had suggested before, and I really still can't see why we don't move the dart area up to where the band area is, because never will we have dart players and bands at the same time, and that floor space is very valuable.
Okay, thank you. Carl?
The design that you've seen proposed on the screen all these months is based off of multiple committee meetings and design team meetings. We have truly taken all the measurements and feel very comfortable about the band location. The primary reason for the band location is to project the sound away from the bowling lanes. And then on our design committee is actually representative of the dart club, and their location that you see on the screen is where they asked for it to be proposed, and it works very good with the overall concept of this space. So everybody has a good opinion, but I would say that all the people that have been invited that have a input on use, all of that has been taken consideration in that picture. So I do appreciate your question. I'm confident in the band size, because we are actually downsizing our band size so that we don't get overwhelmed by groupies that follow big name bands that have performed for us in the past. That has been a problem, and that's an internal operations decision. So you'll see that quelled a bit, but comfortable on the layout. And dart club, it's not really a club, but the dart users would like the boards where you see them on the proposed plan.
Okay, thank you. Director Williams, we have comments?
Yes, I do. I think it's time for us to take an objective look and decide, is Lizard Acres an entertainment center or is it a pub? I don't think it can be all things to all people. We have some very active large clubs, such as Boomers, Zymergy, that provide all kinds of entertainment and music and dance opportunities. So I think we need to look at it carefully and not just race into something. Thank
Okay,
you.
Thank you. Yes.
Hi, Jolene Piaskowski, 132268. Nick's comment, great. I think as a board, we have to kind of decide. I'll be at that February 9th workshop. My other question is this, and I don't know who to direct it to. I'll direct it to you, Tim, but capital projects, when we have a savings, like we're supposed to have a $500,000 savings, where does that money go to?
Goes back to the reserve study.
It does go back to the reserve study? So we see that?
Actually, it's never taken out of the reserve.
Okay, so it's never taken out, and then it just is there. Okay, because I didn't know that. Thanks.
Thank you. Who was it?
That was a director.
Oh, Harry, you have a comment?
No?
Okay.
I heard it. Wow, okay. Hi, Lynn Kellis, 129120. Just had a comment that I actually had a couple of people ask me about Lizard Acres and if it was possible to move the Wii games over to the pool hall. They said that they don't like it in Lizard Acres necessarily, but that's kind of where it is. So I don't know, I'm sure it's probably already been on the board, you know, been out there and talked about, but they would like to have that put out there.
Okay, thank you.
Deborah Johnson, 130208. I just wanted to touch on the library. I know there's quite a few people who go to the library. Do I think that it's actually utilized a whole lot? I'm going to say no, based on the numbers that we've seen and based on the amount of people that we have living in this community. So I would really stress that before we spend another penny on the design of the library, that we go back out to our community and ask the people currently if they're in favor of spending this kind of money on a library design that may or may not happen. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning, Mr. President and Board. My name is Sue Ambler, 129848. A lot of people in here just heard a lewd word, and it's, I'm assuming, going to be on the recording. I'm going to ask the board to listen to that recording and listen to the word that was used. It was just before Jolene, I'm sorry, I can't say your last name. Jolene, I have zero tolerance for anyone to attack someone or even say anything under their breath. Zero tolerance. I've heard it before in committee meetings. I've talked to committee chairs about it. I will not have it as a member. Please look into this.
I agree, we will look into it. Personally, I didn't hear what was said.
Yeah,
So.
it was very clear to me, and I'm
Okay.
not going to repeat the word. If you want to hear it afterwards, call me down.
Okay.
Coke Schaefer, 118548, pickleball. We do need more courts. We are very full. We're very frustrated. Some of our groups are very frustrated because we don't have a place for them. But we do not want coons. There's so many reasons. There's no parking. the walls are going to keep the heat in there, and the wind swirls around in there. It's not a good place for pickleball. We did submit a CR 13 last year. We asked the rec center to help us, or at least get the ball started on taking over some of the tennis courts. We don't see that they're being used to their capacity, and pickleball is. Yes, there are empty courts at some times, but there are many, many times when there are many, many players sitting down because they only have a few courts and there's too many of them on them. So please consider that CR 13 that we submitted last year. Thank you.
Thank you. Is your Director Vines?
Thank you, President Hurley. Coke, when was that CR 13 submitted?
I don't have the date, but it was probably in February or March.
Okay, thank you.
Gwen Rhodes, 125791. I've heard a lot of people say, you know, let's have this study by people next year. That's what these forums are for in March, April, May. We have umpteen meetings, and I'm happy to see people have gotten involved and are interested in paying attention. This is what, otherwise it just gets kicked down the court, kicked down the court, kicked down the court. So any of these decisions that are out there right now, that's when public input, that's when the board's asking for public input. So come to the meetings. I was at a forum, not last year, but the year before, when it was, the budget was in, I think it's one of the April meetings. There were 7 staff up on the dais talking to 4 of us that were sitting in the audience that afternoon at 5 o'clock. 7 of them put in their time, what I would otherwise call after hours, great presentation, nobody was there. So yes, we need to talk about this, but let's do it now when people, and the board, you know, that's what they want. They want to hear all of this. That's my 2 cents.
Thank you. Careful now. No lost time accidents. All right. Have we concluded that, Carl? Yes. All right, we're going to move on. We're going to move on to 3.03, National Lawn Bowling Tournaments, additional liability insurance. We asked the general manager to inquire with our insurance company if there was going to be any additional liability insurance needed if we hosted a U.S. Open lawn bowling.
Yes, thank you, President Hurley and the board. After the last presentation and from the U.S. Open, potentially coming here in the year of 2025, we did contact our insurance agent way too early to get the policy now. They said come back in August, and we will do that. But so for a very slight fee, we can easily pick that up and accommodate. So good news there.
Okay. All right. We're not going to vote on this, but we are going to take a consensus of the board. Do we have consensus that we instruct the general manager to go forward with hosting the U.S. Open? Any discussion about that? Okay. You are so instructed.
Wait, I would like.
So Jack, go ahead.
Yeah.
Director Leary.
No, I was contemplating, I did not vote on the consensus. My hesitation is that we are bringing the public in to our facilities here. And we have rules that we do not allow our clubs to do that. So I want to make sure that we are consistent in how we apply those rules.
Okay.
So that's the only reason why I have not agreed to this.
Okay. I'm sure the Recreation Department will meet with the Lawn Bowling Association and work that out. All right. Okay. All right. Credit card transaction fees, requested facts. Oh, I'm sorry. Harry, did you want to have consensus with that?
I have consensus with that.
Okay, thank you. All right, credit card fees, General Manager, and Cliff Swan.
I will assist with the summary. I think Cliff's got a presentation you'd like to bring forward.
Hello again. Okay, so credit card fees. Gonna give some information on this and then hopefully have some good discussion on it. So here we are. So in the budget, if we look at last year, we spent roughly $620,000. The association is an expense line item for $620,000 for our bank fees associated with credit cards, and those fees come from these areas. The two main areas being golf and membership. The effective rate of that $620,000, so the percentage of the transaction amount when you take all those fees and divide it by the total transaction amount, is roughly 2.9%. So roughly 3%. 3% of the transaction. So let's look at the two main areas, membership and golf. So in membership, and keep in mind, I've factored out APFs in these percentages because APFs are all checks, generally speaking, done through the settlement process with the title companies. So we factored out APFs. And when we look at all of the other transactions in membership, which is membership dues and golf cards, that's made up of 64% credit card, so people paying via credit card, and 35% is checks, people writing checks, okay? And 1% cash. Looking at golf is 88% credit card, 11% cash, no checks really to speak of in golf. So, you know, that speaks to kind of how we process people. You know, people show up at membership, they bring the briefcase, they sit down, they talk about what they did last night with the employee at the desk. And, you know, it's kind of a longer transaction, more of a personal transaction versus golf getting in and getting out. So kind of speaks to how we operate around here. And then combined, 72% of our transactions at our point of sales and online are done via credit card. 23% cash and 5% check. So we talk about that 620,000. That does return. There is a return on that. Okay, the return on that is some of these main points here. It's convenient to our members and staff, meaning we can process transactions quickly, and it's a very convenient process. There's a value to that. We collect our money sooner and more efficiently. Money gets in the bank. You know, we're not chasing it down. We're not waiting 5 to 10 days for a transaction to process on a check. Okay, we have less exposure. This is a huge thing. When I talk about exposure and I talk about having cash at different areas and different sites and facilities, that could present a lot of problems, but it presents a lot of exposure to us. So we have less exposure. It eliminates the risk of getting bad checks, again, chasing those down. And then also being able to collect payment via credit card keeps us current and allows us, you know, for digital enhancements such as phone apps and things like that. So being able, you know, taking credit cards, taking electronic payments helps us in these ways. It's hard to put a dollar value on all these things. I'm going to try and do that, but there's some unknown factors in here that we don't know what the results of those would be. For example, bad checks, things like that. So we know that if we charged a processing fee, that would drive people to pay in different ways. And we know that cash and checks would be, generally speaking, those ways. Checks, I include ACH in that because an electronic check it's initiated by the member and it processes just like a check. It takes 5 business days, generally speaking, to clear. We don't know if that transaction, it's just like a check. It could bounce. And we don't use banks to process our transactions. So for example, if we used Chase to process our ACH and you were a Chase member, they would tell you right away or tell us right away if there weren't funds in the account, but we don't use banks to process these transactions. So we don't know that until those ACH is clear. Okay? Well, that said, we know that we'd have increased wait times at points of sale, so we'd have to address that. We know that with the additional exposure, and I'm going to get into some more details on that as we go through this presentation, but we know that we believe that we would have to employ Armored Car Services to help us with that, with additional exposure to having cash. We know that our bank fees associated with checks and cash will go up, so there's a cost there. There's procedural changes requiring policy changes as well. So if we decided to roll this out, we may have to say, sorry, we don't collect cash in, for example, membership, because we don't want to collect gobs and gobs of cash with transactions being so high. So we may need to write some policies around that. We may need to write some policies around our rec centers as well. So that's something we'd have to address. And we'd also know that there'd be increased labor associated with this. So it would cause us to have to employ more people. And we'll get into the details on that. And then finally, that increased exposure to the staff due to cash to the rec centers is a real thing. And that, we'd have to take some of these other measures because of that. So I tried to put together some estimated cost increases. This is with talking with the different divisional heads and in terms of, what kind of additional procedures or headcount or costs would we have associated with collecting more cash and checks. And the assumption on the cash side is that we currently collect 11%, you saw it on the chart, the pie chart, cash in our 7 golf courses. The assumption here is that would go up to 22%. And I've got some data around that later on in the presentation as well. But the assumption is that would go up to 22%. So credit cards would drop from 88 to 77. Cash would go up from 11 to 22. If that happened, there would be additional costs associated with that. Armored car pickup is $900 per location per month. Annual cost of $86,000. Additional bank charges for processing cash. Cash is the most expensive payment type to process, and checks are more have a cost to them as well. So $30,000 in additional bank charges. $160,000 in labor. That's arrived at our golf courses having an extra half FTE at each golf course, which is a total of 3.5 FTEs. And that's $120,000. That's to help process during the busy times of the day to get people out. So there would be a cost there. And then 1 FTE in membership to help work on collections and reconciling and processing all those checks at the end of the day. Total $276,000 recurring costs associated with that. And we know that, well, first of all, we employ TEI, so we use that software. And we're unique on how we're set up here at the rec centers. So there would be extensive IT development. Don't know what that exactly would be, the cost, but just as much as the cost, and maybe even more so, would be the time it would take to have that developed, tested, and implemented. So it would take some time there to get that done. So this isn't something, if we decided today, that tomorrow we could just go do. And I'll talk about that in a little more detail. So what are our current capabilities if we wanted to charge a processing fee? Well, I kind of alluded to it earlier. TEI has hundreds of customers. Okay, they have one customer that they wrote this programming for, and it was a very basic customer of theirs that charged for one thing. We're different. We have 5 or 6 different businesses here if you want to look at lines of business that we have. Food and beverage, golf, bowling, special events, membership, all these different things that we bill and charge for. Makes it very complex. It's not like going to a business that sells one thing and then they add a convenience fee on the end of their charge. So it's very complex and it's extensive. So, but we do have the ability to charge for billed charges. Well, the only billed charge we have is our member dues. So we could charge for our owner members only. So we don't have the ability to charge for associate members, tenants, landlord cards, anything like that currently. So that would have to be developed if we were going to not only charge for those things, but for other things like golf and bowling and all those things. So that would take development. We do have the ability now, members can pay their dues online via e-check, which is a savings for in terms of the credit card fee. So that currently exists. So we do have that ability for those billed charges to be paid via e-check on the web portal. What would need development? So again, this doesn't exist. Nobody has asked for it from the software company. So they would have to develop that specifically for us. One of the things, our system is a highly developed, highly customized system. So every time we do something new like this, it adds to that customization, which when there are upgrades to the system, it excludes us from those upgrades until they get around to developing our customized software changes into the upgrade, which is last on their list because, they have a set plan that they roll out when they get new customers. So that's what makes it, that's part of the reason it's so complex. But we've got, we would need to have the ability to charge processing fees at points of sale. Okay, so in membership, those one-time charges we talked about, associates, tenants, golf carts, all that would have to be developed. The rec centers, food and beverage, guest fees, golf, all the things that take place at golf, and then member credit. We don't have the ability to pay for member credit on the portal right now, but we do have the ability to pay for member credit by a credit card. We don't have the ability to charge a processing fee. So those two things would need to get developed. We'd have to develop the ability to pay for member credit on the portal and then pay via ACH to avoid a credit card fee. So, one of the things in BNF, when we've talked about this extensively over the past year, really, and one of the things we talked about, and one of the members of the BNF committee said something that kind of struck home with me, and that's, if you do this, you have to give people options. You can't just, it's not good to just do this, because if they don't have legitimate options or other avenues, they're not going to be happy. So those have to be developed as well. So what are the potential savings based on the costs that we currently pay for credit card fees and then the additional costs that would kind of offset those savings? So when we look at membership, in terms of not factoring in the unknown, but factoring the costs that we know we would have, there's a potential of $246,000 in savings in membership. Okay, so the baseline 316 at that 51% of the total pie of 620,000, 316,000 in expense. With those costs that I identified, assuming that the cash would go from 11 to 22% in golf, not impacting membership, but in golf, that's the potential savings in membership. In golf, it's another story. Golf it'd be very tough for very little savings. And there's an unknown factor in both of these that we'll talk about later, but those are the potential savings in those areas with those kind of hard recurring costs that we talked about. Okay, so we kind of did a dry run on this, and one of the things that came out of it was like, well, aren't there any studies out there that talk about what happens when you start charging processing fees? So did a little research on that. Found there's actually a lot out there on it if you want to look it up. I posted the link to the website on payments.com. Very interesting data on this study, but the data says that, and this is for retail transactions. Okay, so golf, this would be golf and bowling and food and beverage and all those things. But 48% of customers are very dissatisfied with paying surcharges on credit cards. Leaves a bad taste in their mouth when you do that. 44% of customers say they would switch merchants over credit card surcharges. They would say, they charge a processing fee, I'm not going there. And 77% of customers say cash is the go-to alternative when switching payments to avoid surcharges in the retail environment. So that's kind of how we're basing our, conservatively basing our jump in cash from 11 to 22%. So, there's some interesting data there. Encourage you to go, there's a link on there. Encourage you to go check that out. But that's some data that we kind of researched. So this one is the shortest information slide, but could have the biggest impact on charging processing fees. We just don't know what'll happen a lot of times. We don't know how many bad checks we're going to have to chase, and they're not intentional. I mean, people write checks, they have old checkbooks, they open new bank accounts, they, don't balance those checks, things like that. Stuff happens. We know that we're going to have a cost there to chasing that down. We don't know exactly what that is and how much bad debt we have. We currently have roughly $5,000 in bad debt a year on $23 million of collection. It's very small. Credit cards is part of that. Taking credit cards, it allows us to collect our money. So that's kind of a big deal. Customer service issues and efficiency and time. We've got the Be Kind campaign out there, and our people hear it when people are standing in line. They want to get processed, they need to get out there, and we want to do it. But we know that that's going to create issues, taking cash and making those transactions longer. So that's just something we would have to deal with. We have $2 million in golf, in outside golf, and we've polled the surrounding golf courses around us. Nobody's collecting a processing fee at golf. They're not doing that. They build it into their prices, just like we have, but they build that into their pricing. So, that would, those 48% or 44% of people that it would leave a bad taste in their mouth that may decide to go golf somewhere else. That's $2 million in revenue for us. It's a big exposure. And then, what's the negative impact on our other sales? Merchandise and food and beverage. Alan, I think one time you said if you had to pay a processing fee and you had to avoid it and you didn't have enough cash, you might not buy that shirt. You might decide that, hey, and a lot of buying behavior, I mean, it's impulse things, there's things that happen, you walk away, you put a barrier up to that sale, it's going to change, So, in summary, I just want to leave with you, first of all, if the board decides to do this, if the community wants this, we can do it. I just want to be clear, it can be done. It's going to take time, it's going to take resources, there's going to be offset in cost, but it can be done. So I want to be clear about that. But, there's a brochure that we hand out to new members, and within that brochure, it's called what your annual dues support. One of the line items in there is bank fees. And bank fees is one of the things that our dues go to support, just like electricity and things like that. So 48% of customers are dissatisfied with paying surcharges. We have $2 million in revenue. If everybody paid with a credit card, it's $60,000 in expense. We're putting $2 million of revenue at risk for $60,000. Okay? When it comes to, public golf. And then, it's a complex issue. There's a lot of loopholes we'd have to try and close. There's current loopholes that we don't have right now. I mean, there's with our current policy. So we'd have to be very strategic on how we did this, which we could. And then the last thing I'll leave you is the exposure with cash. at all those different locations, it's a big deal. And it's not a problem till it's a problem. And we're just increasing the risk that it would be. So I'll leave you with that. I'm going to turn it over to Bill.
Thank you, Cliff.
Thank you, Cliff. And we just want to touch a little bit on it as far as direction goes, as far as us assembling an operational budget. This kind of where this kind of came up. And so in dealing with that, when we talk about what do my annual dues actually support, right? The brochure has been developed. We share that with anyone coming into the office as a new owner member here, or anyone concerned about, what their $540 annually goes towards a lot of things, and bank fees are one of them. And so yes, $600,000 is a lot of money. It's nothing to sneeze at. But when you look at the $2 million coming in from golf, essentially outside golf's paying your bank fees. And so when it comes to that, we look at it, it's like $1.93 a month for every owner member in the community to offset that money. So it's not overly expensive. The way of the world is going credit cards. We all know that. You go to the Phoenix Open, you go to a ball game, you can't buy a beer with cash. Right? So lesson I learned is at an ASU U of A football game, my wife went and got a beer. She took $20, left her purse with me, and came back with 2 beers and $20. And had that work. And they don't take cash. And luckily there were some kind ASU, not U of A fans in the beer line, and bought her beer. So 2 things learned there, right? I mean, wow, they don't take cash, and B, every time you need a beer, have the wife go get it. So that's all good. But I think what we really want to do here is emphasize on the increased exposure with cash. I have no level of comfort talking about cash and how we handle cash and who, what, where, when, and why it goes to the bank, but it has to get to the bank. I don't want to talk about that publicly, but we carry a lot of that. Increasing our cash exposure is not good. And so it really is just the cost of doing business as far as today's world and credit cards. Banks have that figured out, right? Can we tell people to tomorrow start paying all of your annual dues with debit cards? We cannot, it's against the law to charge a service fee on a debit card. So we would save a bunch of money doing that. I don't know if I could convince all the members here to do that, right? Because the banks have won you over with their 2% returns, your airline miles, everything you get, all the benefits you get from using your credit card has you won over. The banks aren't stupid. They've got it figured out. Now, there's legislation at the national level to look at maybe reducing what banks can officially charge. That's a process. But as you see every night on the news, the folks that are elected have a hard time deciding what color the sky is. Whether or not they can come to an agreement on what banks charge is yet to be seen, but it is in the works. So I guess our staff recommendation would be to continue this route. It's included within your annual dues as opposed to any excess fees. And from our perspective, we hope the governing board will honor that and continue this route. Thank you.
Okay, any questions? Director Vines, of course.
Thank you, President Hurley. Well, Cliff, great presentation, full of information. Thank you. The research, the national research that came from the data point, I guess one of the questions I have coming from there is, we have roughly 28,000 residents here. Was there any thought given to maybe doing a survey of the residents here and getting their thoughts on this, or?
Yeah, we talked about that recently, which we could do. I think there's, Katie, is there 10,000 members who are signed up for SurveyMonkey that we could do that with? 6,000?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so
Okay,
we'd be limited.
Very
Unfortunately,
limited in the data.
as far
we're
as
gonna get back.
as us reaching out.
Yeah,
But
I
we
get-
could,
yeah. Very
put,
limited in the data we're going to get back from them. It's going to be like a fourth of, or less of the information. Got it, thanks. And by the way, I agree with everything, what Bill put out there. It's in here, in what we're doing already. And I honestly, I would if we had to vote, if Tim was going to tell us to vote today, I'm going to vote no. that-
Well, we have to develop a motion for it. We'll
So,
do that at
yeah,
the
I know,
workshop. We'll
but
do that
that's
at
my
workshop
thing,
and vote
because,
next week,
and the
next month.
only other thing I wanted to say was, when this first came up earlier, I think it was maybe, I want to say October or something, before that, September, something, when BNF brought it forward, and then the committees, chairs were asked to take it to their committees. Pat O'Hara did a great presentation to the golf committee, and I think Cliff referenced it in here somewhere, that Pat had done his research to the outlying courses for us, and it was close to 100 courses around this area, the Phoenix area, the greater Phoenix area, that don't charge pass this fee on. And the big concern that we have is that will we lose the, outside players? And if we lose any of that $2 million in revenue, it's really going to hurt us. And where do we have to pick that up? In the dues. So, yeah, that's my thought.
Okay, any other comments? Director Rhodes?
Yeah, this, as you've said, this did come out of the Budget and Finance Committee. And the real reason, I think, was so we could finally come to some closure. We had struggled for several meetings or more, several months maybe even, on exactly where do we apply? Where would we go? And the obvious place that we saw was in member services. So now, if we're, and this is kind of a conundrum that we'll be in, is if we decide to have our homeowners assess the banking fee on this, do we say, okay, we'll do it in member services, but we won't do it over in golf? We'll have to kind of pick and choose. We've really never decided as a committee or as a board, do we want to either incorporate the banking fees as we do now into the budget, or do we want to pass them along? And I think that's the issue that we're talking about right now. I think we were very naive last year when we talked about credit card fees. I don't think we understood. You validated today what I have seen before in how much it's going to cost overhead. But I think that the whole issue is we have to provide choices. We provide a choice to, if a homeowner wants to pay by a credit card, yes or no, and if no, then we have to give them another choice to, pay by check or put the money on the table or however. But I really am kind of stuck here. I think that we have to really come to a closure on, do we want to actually pass the fees along, or do we want to continue to incorporate the banking fees within the budget process?
Okay, General Manager would like to comment on that.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Rhodes, thank you. In the early stages of assembling the budget, as far as the operating side, we are obviously looking at all aspects of what we do. And banking fees to us are kind of considered somewhat of a utility, right? We have electric bills, we have water bills, we have to pay those regardless. And those are all shared by the community, right? One and for all. So we see banking fees as a big umbrella that I think everyone shares in, and kind of just cutting that out and looking at it maybe just membership, because that's what we can currently do now with our software system. You're walking down, we think, as far as, when we're assembling the budget, you're kind of walking down a road there that what do we do next year when and if EPCOR raises our water bill? And right now we pay a little close to $400,000 a year in water, and that's not including golf. That's just our restrooms, our showers, watering the softball field, lawn bowling, and all of the, turning water over in our swimming pools and that type of thing. And so where are we going with that as far as, extra charges for that? If you use our rec centers but decide to take a shower, I don't want to charge anybody extra money for taking a shower, right? So it's all shared community-wide. And I think that's where banking fees kind of fall in line, at least with our mentality and our philosophy while we're trying to assemble the budget.
Director Schlemmer? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, President Hurley. I think the telltale slide is the one with the pie charts. If you think about this, black and white, it makes sense. Charge people for the credit card fees. But when we walk out of this building, what are we all going to do? We're going to live by our habits. 88% of our golfers pay by credit card. 64% of our members pay their dues by credit card, and I'm going to bet that number is growing as newer generations are coming in because they're more used to that type of transaction and combine 3/4. I'll use myself as an example, and you use the shirt example. I pulled out my wallet while you were talking. I have $23 in here. Now, I really like the Sun City West. I don't have one on today, but I have a bunch of the Sun City West logo shirts. I don't golf, but I go over to Grandview to buy my Sun City West shirts. And I guarantee you that I don't have enough cash every time I walk in there to do it. And also, whenever I walk in there, I might want to buy one. I always walk out with 2 or 3. And so you presented exactly what my concern is. What do we lose when we start to create these rules? My wife and I were traveling last summer to a cycling event that I went to, and we like to go to local diners when we go into small towns. We feel like it's better than going to McDonald's. We just help the local economy, and there was one diner that had signs up, you know, come eat here, and they had the credit card logos and all that. We walked in, sat down, and the first thing they said to us is, oh, by the way, if you pay by credit card, we're going to add 5% onto your bill or whatever. What did I do? I walked up, I got up and left. Just on principle. I could have paid it. Got up and left. The other problem is I only had $23 in my wallet. So my wife was going to eat, and I wasn't. My point here being part of our job is also convenience for our members, what makes good business sense, what's fiscally responsible. But if 88% of our members are paying by credit cards, I think the answer is resoundingly clear, in my opinion. I certainly have leaned on the side of charging on member fees, and I'm okay with that if that's where we go, but I think this pie chart says it all. And I think you did a great job with the research. Thank you very much.
Okay. Director Leary.
Thank you, sir. We are looking at credit card fees because the number is very large. If we're going to continue down this path, we should also look at all of our banking fees, not just credit cards. Should we charge a surcharge for anybody who writes a check? Should we have a surcharge for anybody who pays in cash, because that's part of our banking fees? So if we're going to do one, shouldn't we do all? Or shouldn't we shouldn't do any?
That's the question.
Yeah.
Harry, do you have any comments on this?
Well, as you know, the golf committee a year ago was not in agreement with charging a credit card fee because of the things that have been stated today. And we agreed to $1 increase in golf fees to cover those credit card fees because we didn't want to chase the $2 million away.
Right. Okay. Terry, we haven't heard from you. Do you have any comments on this?
I was around when we opened up credit cards to everything. Anybody that's lived there for a long time knew we had to pay everything in cash at one point or in checks. Credit cards are so convenient and everything else. And I've been charged extra charges when you go out to eat or something. Depends on whether you want to stay there or not. If you really went out to have a good evening with your wife, you're going to pay the surcharge that they're charging you, you know. But I don't think we should charge it to our members. I really don't. And we need the credit card for convenience. You're not going to get rid of it, you know.
Okay. Okay, we have one online comment.
This is from, excuse me, Scott Oblander, 139839. The generations that are coming now and soon will want to do everything electronic with no surcharges. Credit card surcharge fees are a mistake, in my opinion. And we have a second one from Team Meister. In fact, we have two from Team Meister, one a little while ago. I'll read it first. That one had to do with the comment made earlier. We need to identify, hold accountable the person that was so disrespectful, using profanity toward the member owner who asked a question. We need the governing board to report back on how this was handled. Second comment from the same person on the credit card fees. Education goes a long way. Promotion, ACH debit limit membership to ACH debit CK encourages residents to put dollars on their accounts. Not fair for residents to pay credit card fees for outsiders. That's it.
For outsiders, that's a different wrinkle.
Yeah.
Okay. We're gonna, I had a question for Cliff, and now I can't remember what it is. But we're gonna discuss this again at the workshop, and we'll come up with a motion to vote on next month. But it seems that the feeling is pretty clear as to what we're gonna do with this. Okay, as far as the comment about the supposed profanity that was on the video. As of right now, we're not going to post the video, and the board will look at the video after this and decide or not whether we're going to edit out that comment. So, unfortunately, the people that are live with us heard it, and if we hear it, we're going to edit it out. So people coming in won't be subjected to it. All right. We're going to postpone, I'm sorry, is there any other comments on credit card fees? Okay, we're going to open up to resident comments for credit card fees only, please.
Yes, Sharon Haddock, 106159. That's not on board docs. Is there a reason we couldn't have the copy of your presentation? Thank you. That's all.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning, Board. Bruce Lees, 135-422. This is a subject that brings a bad taste to my mouth because it's something that we've been kicking around for well over a year with having made zero progress. You know, last year's budget discussions and everything I was involved in, I even had an opportunity to get up and speak. One of the things that I looked at was the inception of when the budget was being put together, the initial recommendation on owner member dues, fees starting at 2.6%, but as the year progressed, those percentages kept increasing until it reached a 6.1%, which was eventually voted on and approved by the board. That brought like $740,000 additional revenue from the members paying those dues. I think it was somewhat of a bait and switch because you recognize that you sucked up $640,000 in credit card fees and were hair on fire how you were going to make up that revenue, and did so on the backs of all the members instead of the persons that used the credit cards to run up those costs. Now, I'm not a conspiracy theorist or anything like that, but math is math and the numbers don't lie. So I would hope that we could resolve this situation during this budget cycle because it's never going to go away. And the person that made the comment that the new persons coming to these communities are somewhat younger in age, and everything is about instant gratification and doing it on their phones, that's going to come back to bite us if we don't reconcile some kind of decision on how to proceed. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Nick Turner, 131829 again. One other factor I think that needs to be taken into consideration is the opportunity cost of the management time if we do this. Is it better that we have Cliff and Katie and other people were spending the next 18 months a proportion of their time preparing for credit card fees? Wouldn't it be better if they were working on other and more valuable things which are going to build for the future, as opposed to something which is actually probably going to hamper our future? And I think, although you're moving towards a decision, perhaps at the discussion at the workshop next time, and a decision at some point, probably at the next governing board meeting, going further than membership and paying annual dues online by ACH and debit card, and maybe a credit card surcharge there, I don't think we should be going any further than that. I think the opportunity costs are going to be too great, and again, the risks on the golf side probably too high compared to the savings there.
Okay, thank you. I do want to add that I had a discussion with Cliff and Bill yesterday about this issue, and Cliff delved into what exactly it was going to take to do this. And we got way in the weeds on what has to happen and things like that. I'm glad he didn't go there today, but it is a very complex issue, and it would take a long time to get this done. So, all right. Thank you, Cliff. All right, we're going to postpone to the February workshop the family guest pass and the toddler fee age waiver discussion. So we're going to go right to director comments now. I'm going to start with you, Harry. Do you have any comments to wrap this up?
No comments.
Okay, thank you. Director Vines?
Thank you, President Hurley. I want to say first off to Cliff, Bill, and the staff, Carl, but he's no longer here. This was by far, in my 3 years here, the best budget first pass I have seen come out the chute. That was outstanding, and I really tip my hat to for that. Lynn, nobody answered your question, so I'm going to do that now regarding the Wii bowling at Lizard Acres. We talked about this extensively. There is really no easy way to move that to the billiard room because it would be too costly. We have to remove pool tables. They have to build a wall because it would disrupt the pool players. And so it was decided to just leave it at Lizard Acres Pub. And I think everybody, and regarding Lizard Acres, I wanted to say quickly that it was meant as a lounge and to bring in just like a single, maybe duo act, and the push come to shove, maybe a triple act if they could, but mainly as a lounge. They're also having people in there playing cards, mahjong. Like I said, we have the Wii bowling, so it's really just meant more of like a lounge, and it's really doing great for the community. It has taken off more than we could have ever anticipated. And so that's all I have to say.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Director Leary?
None.
Director Williams?
No comment.
Director Rhodes?
No comments.
Director Schlemmer?
Just very quickly, one, I want to echo the comments on the presentations today and the work. I think they were excellent, and I like the way we've dived into, the staff has dived into these issues. The second thing I just wanted to quickly mention is we've talked about the lawn bowling tournament coming, and I'm really encouraged by that. Those are great opportunities for us to market this community. We don't have a marketing, like we're not a new community still being built. We don't have a Dell Web company behind ads and whatever, but that's a great opportunity to bring new interest into Sun City West and our sister community, Sun City, and I think it's a fantastic chance for us to showcase, and I appreciate the club bringing that forward. I hope it does work out.
All right, thank you. Director Hammond?
None.
All right, I just have a comment, and that is I really appreciate the turnout today. I appreciate all of the comments. We welcome comments on both sides of these arguments because it helps us make a more informed decision. So with that, we have one comment online.
Correct. Open meeting.
We'll beep it. We don't need to subject our people to listen to that. Yes.
I believe after you listen to it, you may want to have an executive session, a closed session to address it with the member, board
Okay.
member.
Okay, all right.
Sharon Heddick, 106-159. I'm here today. I would like to present to the Rec Center's Sun City West Board over 1,200 signatures in regards to Sun City West attesting to a vote of no confidence in the general manager. This was done in about 2.5 weeks of collecting names and signatures. And at this time, we've asked the board to accept the petitions. So they're here.
Sure, thank you.
We'd like to have a meeting of the board.
We'll see.
Well, not having a meeting speaks volumes to the community.
Okay, thank you.
T.L. Johnson, 130207. As you're aware, you violated policy L10, the confidentiality agreement, on November 28th, 2023, when you disclosed information regarding my disciplinary hearings on social media. My wife has asked you many times for formal written apology and a retraction on that same social media site. You claim to have had a misrecollection that the hearing was open. That does not preclude you from apologizing for your actions. This governing board has not held you responsible or accountable, and my formal agreement submitted to the Recreation Center on 21 December 2023 has been ignored. It appears that this governing board holds residents to a much higher standard than they do the board president. I'd like to know when you're going to be an adult and do the very small gesture requested by making a formal written apology and posting a retraction on social media.
All right, thank you for your comments.
So with the budget hearings coming up.
Name and rec number, please.
I'm sorry. I had a little brain thing. Deborah Johnson, 130208. With the budget hearings coming up and the majority of our expenses coming from salaries, I have to ask, how many employees does RCSDW have who make over 100K or more? How many vehicles does RCSCW have in its fleet? Does RCSCW have any employees who receive a vehicle as a perk? And if so, why? Are we paying the insurance, maintenance, or gas for that vehicle? What does that cost? Do we have any RCSCW employees who are allowed to take a recreation center vehicle home? If so, who and why? And if the answer to the why is because of availability for emergency, I'd like to know how many of these employees responded to an emergency after hours and needed the RCSCW vehicle to resolve the emergency. That's it.
Okay, we'll be glad to respond to those, but could you submit those in writing because it was a
I
long
can.
list? Okay,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
I think someone walked off with the pen. Uh-oh. Now we know.
Hugh Martin, and my number is 122481. And I want to talk briefly about CCNR. I know our dues support CCNR, and I know, according to the document they gave me, that the CCNRs is a legally binding document recorded with Maricopa County describing the requirements and limitations about what you can and cannot do with your property. The goal of the CCR is to protect and preserve and enhance the property values in our community. However, under storage buildings, it says clearly, no storage buildings or sheds, including greenhouses, shall be moved, placed, assembled, or constructed or otherwise maintained on any lot. And that's consistent with Cortabella and other premier communities, the Grand, formerly known as Sun City West Grand or Sun City Grand. But now, my neighbors told me months ago that there is in fact a shed in Sun City West. And I asked her where this shed was. She told me. I went over there, and she was correct. There was a shed there. And I called CCNR, and I said, what's with the shed? And the gentleman answered the phone. He said, well, we're working with the property owner now on that issue. And I said, okay. So I told my neighbor, I think it's going to be resolved. Months went by, and I know I only have 2 minutes, so I'm going to just simply say that I was told that now that shed can stay there because there's now a breezeway exception to that rule. So if you have a shed in your yard or you have a greenhouse in your yard, if you have a breezeway going from your house to the shed or from your house to the greenhouse, it's good. So this house and its shed has a breezeway, and according to CCNR, that's golden. And I want to know, since they say it's a judicial process or it's a legally binding document, how that was amended. How was it that we were told no sheds, no greenhouses on our lots, and suddenly...
Okay, we'll see if we can get an answer for you. Riley, would you like to take a stab at this, please?
And my 2 minutes are up then?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Excuse me. With the advent of, say, ARC, for example, we have, which is a very popular club, sells a lot of homes here. We have people putting on additions for, be it garages, things of that nature. The one that Hugh is referring to is, in fact, excuse me, I've got a bit of a cold, is actually a golf cart garage. And we have gone to our attorneys seeking that question, what's considered attached? We look at Maricopa County Code. And if it's structurally attached to the home, we have casitas, for example, that are attached by a breezeway. We have secondary garages that are attached by a breezeway. And this golf cart garage is in fact architecturally connected to the house, which requires a building permit through Maricopa County. So it's applicable to all setbacks and regulations.
So when you say breezeway, are you talking about the partition of the roof?
Typically, it's a partition of the roof. We have quite a few of them out there that are what you would classify as a adobe style roof that attaches the garage and the home. And some of those have existed for years. Unfortunately, when we took over the CCNRs, we did find that there was, there's 40 years of sins, if you will,
right,
that have happened out there. And that's why what we ask them members to do is to come and see us before they do any building. This particular unit was built prior to coming and seeing us. And we had to, at that point, refer to Maricopa County what's structurally attached. And he did have to go out and get a building permit for that, which again confines you to your building setbacks.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Jolene Piaskowski. Hey, Tim. Hey, since you guys are having are going to have an executive decision or meeting, and I guess I would be involved with that because whoever said whatever, I would like to be in that meeting if possible.
Executive session would be just for the board.
Okay.
It would be a closed session just for the board.
So am I now, and you're not gonna allow that to go out? Am I correct? You are,
Yeah, we will beep it so it doesn't, people that,
and what do I get for that?
sorry that it happened.
Oh, really, Tim?
What do you want me
Really?
to say, Jolene?
Jolene,
I
it
didn't
would
even
be-
hear it. I don't even know
It
what
would
was
be a
said.
personnel issue, and so we have to deal with that in private, because it would be a personnel issue. And at the moment, I think we have to listen, because Tim didn't even hear it. We heard it. We have to listen, but honestly, it was said between two people, and I'm not sure exactly who it was aimed at, so that's why we have to go back and listen. But if I'm not mistaken, it's a personnel issue.
Yes, it's a closed issue.
Okay.
Again, Sue Ambler. Let's see, 129848. I am, I've said a few times, I'm a former chief executive officer and president to a very large nonprofit in the state of Washington. And I've worked with boards and managed boards and been on boards for a number of years, like 25, 30 years, something like that. I would like to offer my expertise if there are members who would like to come to like a forum, and I can answer questions about responsibilities of boards, responsibilities of general managers, presidents, and that type of thing, and how those work or don't work. It's something that I've just worked with a lot, and I think a lot of people don't know what the ins and outs of those are and the requirements of ours. I'm just offering my expertise just for a forum or something if you so desire.
I think I asked you once before if you would run for the board.
This year it wasn't possible. I have another commitment.
Okay, good. All right. If there are no more comments, our next workshop is February 9th, 9 o'clock here in the lecture hall. Our next general meeting is February 22nd, 9 o'clock here in the lecture hall. I have office hours on Monday, February 5th from 10 till 2. And if you would like to come in and visit, if you would please call Karen, 623-544-6115, and she will set the appointment for us. So other than that, I will adjourn the meeting at 11:02.